Hello everybody, this is Danny TCP, TheCriminalViolin here. This is going to be probably slightly different quality and sounding compared to normal audio quality because of the fact that one, I actually only just woke up, and then two is the fact that, well, I say only just woke up, but actually I woke up probably about like 20 minutes ago. Because of the fact it's only just after 8 a.m., this means that I am not allowed to be as loud as I normally could be in terms of like normal volume and things like that, speaking and all that, until 10. So that said, it's going to be a little bit different. Plus, I'm not using my computer, which means you shouldn't be hearing the power supply fan, and of course you aren't. And you probably only should be hearing the traffic and me speaking. That also means that I'm not using my high quality microphone, professional quality microphone. I'm using my phone to record. But I felt really inclined, urged to speak about something that's really kind of important to me and close to my heart and all that a lot of people are dealing with, of course, right now in the U.S. today. Just on such a consistent basis is ridiculous. So yesterday, of the day I'm recording this, which today is, I believe, the 22nd of February of 2018. I actually was looking for the date on my phone, but I don't actually see it. So I believe it's the 22nd today, so I believe it was the 21st yesterday, which would mean that it was the 21st of February 2019 that the Portland Police Bureau in the city of Portland held a public sit-in and meeting to speak with the public and hear from the public about their concerns and their problems with the Bureau, with Portland Police Bureau, and just in general, their general concerns about their safeties and everything else. So, of course, there was a live tweeting about it, and I read it today, this morning, and in reading it, there was a few things that I felt like I wanted to touch on and talk about more in a general sense than specific, but I will start with the specific thing, which is, of course, the Portland Police Bureau itself, and the fact that statistically this year and last year, both, it was officially considered the most prejudiced police department statistically in the entire nation. And that says a hell of a lot when you still have the New York City Police Departments and precincts, and you still have the LA Police Department and precincts. The two cities that have some of the most most prejudiced police forces throughout history, with so many horrible incidents, and the Portland Police Bureau of Portland, Oregon ends up for 2 years straight overtaking them as the most prejudiced and abusive department in the entire nation of all the police. And you think about it, and we haven't really had any mass shootings, we haven't really had any of the typical things you expect to hear about and to see on a consistent basis with a department like that. So you have places in Florida that are really ridiculously, full of stories and incidences that are, whether they're mass shootings or they're hate crimes or this, all these other things, except you think about it and that's actually literally what would be considered crime rate rather than the police departments doing that. Because the police department thing, you think about a lot of the Deep South. You think about people like Alton Sterling, Trayvon Martin, and all these different cases of prejudice policing and all that. And it's ridiculously, of course, heartbreaking and annoying and just sickening. Physically makes you ill, but at the same time, you think about those kind of incidences, and most of those things are in the Deep South. You occasionally get them elsewhere, and then a little further back in history, and then you keep thinking of course, the LAPD and the NYCPD. But you don't think of places in the Pacific Northwest, or really anywhere, I guess, kind of even in the Midwest necessarily, unless you're thinking, I guess, maybe of Chicago. But then you look at the statistics the last 2 years, and Portland, Oregon has topped it. And this year, or I should say 2018, so it's 2017, 2018, because of course they come out the year after for that prior year. So since it's 2019, it was 2018 is the latest report. So 2017, 2018, Portland Police Bureau was tops in the nation in prejudices and prejudice treatment of crimes, supposedly, and just people in general that they interact with. They're supposed to serve and protect. Just realized the heater is on, so it probably now has extra noise because it's actually rather close to me. The Portland Police Bureau, like a lot of places, if not all the places in the nation, for some reason the mayor of the city is always dual wielding a job. So he's also the police commissioner, or she's the police commissioner, depending on your place. We have Ted Wheeler here. Literally, no matter where you are in the political spectrum or lack thereof, you probably hate him. Like pretty much everybody in the entire Portland metro area, and even in the state, Portland, Vancouver metro area, that seems to really hate him for whatever reasons, and it's for good reason usually. Both sides usually have fairly valid reasons. Like he's an absolute disgusting stereotypical politician that you hate, and as a police commissioner he's even worse. And when you consider the fact you have people like Danielle Outlaw, who are police chief, it gets really further disheartening and a little more complicated and annoying, because of the fact that, and of course I'm saying this as a white person, so of course people are probably going to cry racist or whatever, or something, I don't know. They're going to get upset in some way because, or bent out of shape because I'm white and I'm saying this. But Danielle Outlaw is actually African American herself, but the statistics of the department since she's been there as police chief have proven, and a lot of her, just all of her different reactions and her different public statements and comments have proven, time and time again, that she herself is wholly complicit in the police department's prejudices and racism. And the race that they're most, prejudiced towards and treat with the most prejudice is literally the African American population, of which she's a part of. And she's made public comments time and time again supporting that prejudice, because supposedly it's, the blacks that are doing this, or the blacks that are doing that, or the blacks that are most prone to do this, or the blacks that da-da-da-da-da-da. It's like, woman, you're stupid. You're one of those, you're literally part of that city populace. You're literally willing to be just as complicit in the racism and the prejudice towards your own ethnicity and your own race, your own families and background, than you are to not be a prejudiced prick. Like, and then this group that they're second most prejudiced to is the homeless population, which that I feel like sadly goes for pretty much anywhere in the entire U.S. You're gonna have the police be really prejudiced towards the homeless, because it seems like in the U.S. there's this thing where just about everybody, for some reason, has this feeling like they should be, and they always are, feeling so prejudiced towards the homeless population, as if the homeless population is such a dire, grave inconvenience and just horrible toll for them to hold on to, and just to see them being existent. Which, you could go on to the homeless part. It is an entirely different story in itself, because it's like, is it really you that has such the grave inconvenience to have to see them exist? Or is it them being homeless, without a roof over their head, without being able to afford public transportation, which is despicable in itself, the fact that they can't seem to get a job because of the fact that they are homeless, or they can't get, food because all of the different kitchens that we have, which there's so many, a lot of times they run out of food, or they just aren't open yet, or you've filled your quota or something. I don't know. It's ridiculous. I mean, the fact that you don't have a roof over your head, you don't have anywhere you're allowed to live, because every single place you try to be, they tell you you can't live. Without literally saying that, they're saying you're not allowed to live. You're not allowed by law to live. We can't let you live. Because that's basically what they effectively say when they're saying, get up, you can't be here, move again. Everywhere they go, they're told to move. They're told they can't be there. They're told they can't stay there. They're told they can't put up a camp there, a tent there, anything. No matter if these people are well reputable and they know that they're working their asses off, they know that they're always keeping themselves clean, they're always checking into various places that we, fortunately, in our city have, that most other big cities do not have and wouldn't be caught dead having. They have some of the most support in the city out of all the cities in the nation. In comparison, there's so much support, which of course draws a lot of criticism from those who are, predictably, if you could figure, are actually against and hate homeless people. And it's like ridiculous. And like I said, I could go on and make my own another chatterbox all about that, but So the fact that people treat the homeless as such a dire inconvenience, just that they even exist in the first place, is so deeply offensive to me, because it's like you're the one with the car, you're the one with the ability to afford to have a car, to commute, to afford to have a roof over your head, to have a home, to have a job, to have food every night, to have water every night, to have warmth every night and every day, to have, keep up consistent, clean, relatively good condition clothes. Even if you go to Goodwill for all your clothes, so to speak, or, an example, it doesn't make you less advantaged than anybody else, because you're still far better off at that point with those new to you clothes than you are, or than these homeless people are. And it's like you cannot, it should be illegal to be able to criticize being homeless, or to be able to criticize the homeless, or to treat them with prejudice. But then again, it should be illegal to be prejudiced at all. And people are, of course, we cry, it's an infringement of free speech. Like, yeah, but that's a free speech I would be okay with getting rid of, is not letting people hate on any group. But then again, that wouldn't stop people from being people, and thus it wouldn't stop people from being hateful and all that stuff and being prejudiced anyway. So I guess, what does that really do except push it underground and make it potentially more explosive and volatile? But I digress. Anyway, so yeah, the Portland Police Bureau is the most prejudiced in the nation. That's the second group. They're the second most prejudiced second group they are most prejudiced towards, behind the African American population of the city. And again, it's statistically, and it's just ridiculously despicable. And you look at it and you look at, okay, well, who's police chief? And it's an African American woman. It's like, what the actual flying fork is this bullshit? What the hell's happened here? How the hell did this happen? And it makes you look around the nation. A lot of times you'll see a lot of videos and a lot of photos and a lot of articles and everything else that is, you literally get these police officers, there'll be two of them in a mass shooting, or in a shooting situation where they shoot and kill some African American kid or something, or woman or family, and there's no matter what, there's no warranting for it, no matter what race the cop is. But for some reason, there's the white cop and there's a black cop, and the black cop is the one who's lower ranking usually. Go figure. That's probably for predictable reasons. In fact, prejudiced ones at that. And you can tell that they realize, oh, this other guy is not shooting, but he wants to shoot, which means I'm supposed to be shooting right now. In other words, earn your stars, so to speak, earn your stripes, so to speak. You're supposed to earn your trust with your brothers in blue. And so what does the black cop do? He's the one who fills the other people, usually black people, with bullets, even if they know they're not deserving of it. Why? Because there's this stigma and this unsung rule where you have to always support and do what you're expected to do if you're a police officer, quote unquote, brothers in blue. You're supposed to always stick together and always do what each other are expected to do without questioning, or otherwise you're not considered properly supportive of your brothers in blue, so to speak, and your job. And it's like, that's not your job, is to be a racist prick who's out there trying to cull a certain group that a lot of these white guys and people inside of the police departments decide that they want to cull because they hate. Like, they're not, I don't know, a diseased population of cattle. You can't just go and decide, well, I'm going to cull these people now. Like, what the fuck is that wrong with these people? In good old Portland, Oregon, there's that. And of course it keeps rebirthing everybody saying, well, Oregon was the most racist state in the nation by far for the longest time. It was only fairly recently the people seemed to flip face and suddenly become known that way. And it's like, yeah, it was basically just before I was born, probably around the time my sister was born, like 1990, I want to say, in between 90 and 95, is really when the majority of the populace in Oregon, specifically in the Portland metro area and probably in the Eugene area, seemed to just quickly pull a 180 and flip the other way. And suddenly they weren't so fucking racist. They were actually some of the and prejudice towards even groups like homeless, they were actually really suddenly supportive. They were really truly understanding, or at least trying to be understanding of all of it. And they were really truly advocates for equality and stuff. And it's always been ever since the police departments and the governments that have been the racist pricks. They have been holding on to all of those racial prejudices and laws that have been here since the state was formed in 1859, Valentine's Day, 1859. Which, if you think about it, Oregon being formed on Valentine's Day, and from that point on, still being the most racist state in the nation by a long shot, which is wild to think, even especially when we have the Deep South existing. All the way from 1859 to like 1990-ish, maybe 95, and it's like, wow. You just get to think about that, and it's like, it really let it sink in. It's like, Jesus Christ, Because of that, it's so famously done, and now all these people, these, SJWs and stuff are always pushing that, well, technically an agenda, that perspective of, oh, see, they're the most racist state in the nation. It's like, no, we're not. We haven't been since like the early, maybe mid 90s at latest. People did a pull the whole 180 and just were suddenly very different with that. Don't ask me why or how, but it was mostly genuine. And a large population, the large population of racists actually kind of got ran either east of the Cascades, or they got ran out of the state up into, most of them up into the Vancouver area of Washington. And they've been pretty much up in Washington ever since. Specifically, again, the Vancouver area. Apparently, recently it was found that a large portion live in Battleground. Supposedly it's a stronghold. I don't know if Battleground really is or not. Also, ironically being called Battleground at that point. But, yeah, we haven't been for a long time. The people, that is. Well, I guess not a long time, but about as long as I've been alive. It's like the point is that you need to learn to separate the people from the state. You need to separate the people of the state from their government and their police forces. Therein lies the major problem that people don't see, they don't accept, and they don't really realize that they need to start doing, is that it's our state government, it's our municipal governments, it's a lot of times our county governments, but especially the state government, and then municipal governments like that of the city of Portland, and then our police bureaus, our police departments. These are the racist organizations that still exist. They're the ones who keep perpetuating this old school Oregonian ideology, mindset, and racism and prejudices and all that. And it's really, really screwed up that they're so keen on clinging so tightly to the state's extensively prejudiced past and extremely prejudiced laws. Like, there's a lot of them that are still there that they actually keep trying to use and enforce. There's actually a video that went viral on YouTube a large number of years ago, and it was called Open Carry in Oregon. And it was I believe it was called that. And the entire point was to show that, yes, Oregon has an open carry law, but there's a lot of prejudice in the police forces behind the enforcement of that law. And the way they treat people, depending on their skin color, their pigment, the amount of melanin they have, if they look like a tube of sour cream or not, versus if they look like they might actually be more like a tube of pudding or something, so to speak, in terms of the way I kind of use analogies in melanin and color of skin. And it's ridiculous to watch it, because you immediately, as soon as you click on it, you're like, oh, I see what they were going to do here. And you realize immediately how it's going to end too. And it's just, it immediately kind of makes you sick. And it's like you're watching it, and yeah, it's watching, you watch a couple of white guys open carry AKs and ARs on them. And yeah, people seem really uncomfortable, but they're looking at them with that uncomfortability, but they're still going about their days without saying anything. And the police, they might, if they decide to stop and question, they'll literally look at you and be like, basically, do you have a permit for that? Can I see it? And they're like, yeah, okay, great. It's like, all right, we have a great day. But only one of them gets stopped, and just that's literally the extent of it. And then the police leave, and then the other guy, he's left alone. Then you cut, and then it's a little bit later, and you have one of their friends, and it's a guy who looks like he's probably maybe part Arab and part African American, and of course part white. And now he's carrying a gun, and the police instantly have a different response. Even everybody else has immediately different look they give him, except the people who are driving, they see him, but they don't have a reaction at all because to them they aren't being prejudiced. But the police will have a prejudiced reaction happily. There's literally a police officer who's going to make a turn at a red light and immediately flipped on his lights and the sirens and then went code 5 on that guy's ass. Instantly prejudiced. Instantly. Because this guy happens to have a much darker set of skin and a different ethnic look. He immediately assumed this guy was, I guess, a terrorist or something, or he was planning on doing a mass shooting. So he's just like, I got a freaking code 5 on this guy's ass, open my door, yell at him to get on the ground and point my gun at him and act like my life's in a dire threat and danger, you know. And you end up having like two other cops that were on patrol in the area suddenly all just converge and decide to fly in a code 5 as well because they don't know any better because this guy didn't call in for backup. They just were in the area and they immediately do it because they think, oh, maybe this guy actually really did something threatening with this gun. So they don't know any better technically. But all of these cops are white is the problem, and this guy isn't. And so he's being treated as if he's just shot up a mall or something. And it's like, what the actual fuck, man? And literally the only thing is that he had a darker skin tone. He wasn't white. Therefore, of course he was a terrorist or something. Like, what the fuck? And that was literally proof from this group of friends. They did it, and this guy did this that got code 5'd on, knowing he probably even have some fraudulent set of police reports filed against him that would probably be accepted and without question by the courts, and he'd probably be arrested for something completely bullshit and wouldn't really be able to do much about it. He knew he was taking that risk, and he happily did it anyway to show and make a point that the police and the government are the ones who are prejudiced, not so much the people. Even though there is certain types of people that will be somewhat more prejudiced, whether they realize it or not, but they're still, the people usually here are still, even if they are slightly more prejudiced, you can tell that they kind of are thinking about it and like, you know, sorting it in their head, like this isn't quite right. Like, why am I reacting differently here? You can kind of see them slowly calm themselves down, even though they still aren't comfortable because almost nobody in this state is comfortable with guns. You know, it's kind of like the joke of you think of you're suddenly like California because of their, you know, majorly anti-gun majority of people in the major population areas, and then of course in the more rural areas they're like hardcore for guns because again, you know, that's just stereotypical of the US. The more rural you get, the more Republican conservative you get, the more urban you get, the more liberal and democratic you get, which is some weird thing that's always been the case in this country for like at least the last like 50, 80 years. You know, of course the joke with California is in 2020 they're going to officially ban their state because of the fact that it looks too much like a bump stock. Which I love because it feels so freaking true with like anything that even looks like something like that. They're like, ban it. It's like, okay, you better ban yourself because your state looks like a bump stock. Just saying. You know, AK, I'm just saying. But, you know, Oregonians are not as, you could say, prejudiced towards, you know, guns as that. In fact, there's a lot of liberal Democrats that actually enjoy, you know, going out shooting every so often and hunting. So it's like they aren't really that uncomfortable with guns, but they're enough in terms of open carry. Like at that point, especially assault weapons are like in open carry bound. It's like, yeah, I'm not really happy with this, you know? Like you can tell they're not comfortable with it and they're like, this doesn't feel safe. And I can understand that myself, but they aren't gonna, you know, go up to you and be like, you need to get, you know, you can't have that gun out here. You shouldn't do that or whatever, you know? They're like, I'm uncomfortable. You need to put that away. They're just like, you know, they'll give you a side eye, like, okay, I'm gonna get out of here because I don't want to be uncomfortable anymore. But yeah, and this was a group of friends. Again, going back to that video, there's a group of friends that just like they're really tight knit, and you know, they're multi-ethnic, they're multiracial, you know. It's not like they're prejudiced themselves at all. And they're trying to show in that video that it's not so much the people that are prejudiced, it's the police and the government that are prejudiced in Oregon. And that is reigned true for quite a while. And this again was like somewhere between I think 5 and 8 years ago that this video was recorded and posted. So I mean, this was pretty long ago, and now you're getting to this point, and it still is probably even more so the case than ever, where it's literally the governments and the police in this state that are really prejudiced, and seemingly proudly so, but the people, majority of them aren't. And so it's just kind of interesting to look at that and note that and see that, you know, especially as somebody who's lived here his entire life, it's like you can just see how people have changed and how the state has changed and how things have changed. And it's like you can see this like flip of the people, but the police and the government responded to that flip of like, we got to hold this even closer now. We got to really protect our prejudice because we're not letting go of this. This is our shit, you know. And it's like, geez, get protective of your prejudice much just because people are no longer very prejudiced in the state is so screwed up. Danielle Outlaw was, you know, saying various things to start the whole public commentary of basically saying, we're here to listen, I'm here to listen and understand what's going on so we can start this once and for all our problems, you know, and your concerns. And it's like, of all the people that could have said that, the only one that would have been more bullshit is Ted Wheeler. You're a close second, Danielle. One of the things I was saying and on Twitter about that was this morning was the fact that it's really sad and you know it's bullshit when she says that, because she's never at once actually cared about what anybody had to say, to the extent that as a member of public service, I mean, she's not just a police officer, she's a police chief. These people are public servants, they're public service agents. They're supposed to be available to anybody in the public 24/7 technically. So even if they're off duty, they're supposed to be more than openly happy to let these people speak to them and talk to them, whether it's about their jobs or not. That's their job as a part of their job description. She doesn't believe that, to the extent that anybody who approaches her when she's off duty, or when apparently they're willing to literally get up close to her to talk to her in person and ask her certain questions, if she decides that she doesn't want to answer those questions, then she fabricates some bullshit and then runs basically a case against you and probably tries to imply that you were supposedly being creepy stalker and you deserve to be sentenced on that for that and harassment. And because the government and the police are hand in hand in that kind of prejudice, it doesn't matter what it is. Even at that point, you're going to be arrested, whether it's valid or not. And you can have the ACLU be like, that was bullshit. That's not how that worked. Even if somebody high ranking in the ACLU of Oregon was there, they'd say that. The government and the police wouldn't care. They'd still sentence you to this bullshit sentence for doing something that you didn't technically do, you know, for being supposedly a stalker and harassment and all this stuff. And it's like, no, you're a public service agent. Specifically, you're the police, the chief of police. You're supposed to be, able to be approached 24/7 with any questions, and you're supposed to be required to answer them honestly. When you try to do that, well, especially if you're on duty, but even if you're off duty, then there's something very, very wrong here. There's a dire error happening that should never be accepted, and you need to be held accountable for that, because you're lying to your teeth that this was a case of harassment or whatever, and that's a problem. And she's a advocate of basically fabricating bullshit police reports and arrest reports on people that are quote-unquote cop watchers and those who film the police. She hates those people so much, which also kind of reveals and says a lot. Like, at that point, what makes you so uncomfortable with people filming you and filming your police and being watchdogs of them? What makes you so uncomfortable? Because if anything, that only proves, if you're so trigger happy of fabricating bullshit on these people to arrest them so that they can't film you anymore and they can't watchdog you, and to try and intimidate others from that are interested and don't want to try it from doing it, that means you're doing some really shady shit that you do not want filmed, that you do not want taken pictures of, that you do not want documented. That's what that proves. So what kind of shit are you doing that hasn't necessarily been filmed or taken pictures of or caught yet? That hasn't been brought to the public's attention. What is it you're doing that you are so desperate to try and avoid caught on camera in whatever fashion or on audio or both? So that is a proving point that there is a lot of more shadier shit than what is publicly knowledgeable to the populace with the Portland Police Bureau and what the kind of stuff they do. Because whether your own chief of police is that determined to get rid of people and put them away, the people who aren't doing any crimes. In fact, they're actually doing something that the Constitution of the U.S. itself it was literally pushing as a necessity, not just a want, but a necessity of its people to film the police, or to, in other words, keep records of the police, document them. That says a lot. Necessity. And if they decide to come up with something, say you're going to be under arrest or whatever, they're going to confiscate it. They're already being illegal themselves, but they're claiming you're illegal. That's even better, because now you especially if you're smart enough, you have something where you can, basically have you turn off your phone and lock it up, and then they have no access into your phone or whatever you're using, especially if it's your phone that's good, because of that ability. And some of these things, it allows you to still keep filming and recording audio, or or even with it locked up and off, and that prevents them from being able to do anything with it. So at that point, it's going to do that. Plus, it will the moment you turn it off and lock it, it's going to automatically then log that into a server somewhere, and a secure encrypted server somewhere where the police can't get to. So even if they did finally break into your phone, even if they wipe it off your phone, it's still actually available to then take out later and get. And they don't know where it is or how to get to it, which is really important. Like, at that point, you have the world's best case against the police and the government, and even the judges, who, if you go before a judge, they're like, "Yep, you're sentenced to this because you totally did that." It's like, okay, guess what? I have a case against literally every single one of you now. Congratulations, you just fucked yourselves. And they're like, no, 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 we got it. If they try to say something, no, 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 it's not possible. It's like, okay, how's it not possible? You literally just said you arrested me because I was recording and I wouldn't stop, and therefore apparently that was illegal, which it isn't. Which is why a case against all of you, including you, the judge. So, if I was recording the entire time, and you yourself said you weren't able to get into my phone and delete it, how is it that I don't have all of the evidence in the world to prove that you guys did this? You know? And they couldn't answer that. They could come up with some fabricated bullshit, but then they're just making it worse for themselves, and they know that. They might be willing to do that, but, like, it's ridiculous. But anyway, so Danielle's really against that as well. I mean, she's leading the police department. She led the police department herself, single-handedly, pretty much, along with Ted Wheeler, into the state it is now, into the most statistically prejudiced police department in the entire goddamn nation, as an African American woman. And the most prejudiced group the group they're most prejudiced against is her own people, so to speak. It's the African American community. I mean, you just think about that. It's ridiculous. Third most is actually the LGBT plus community. And if you're also happen to be black, or even also homeless and black, and you're of the LGBT plus community, I mean, any of the combination of those three, you suffer so deeply much more hell from the police and the government than you do, especially the police, the Portland police, than you do any other groups, because you're a combination of the three they are prejudiced and hate the most, and therefore you're the most favorited target to absolutely abuse the system on, which is really despicable and sad, but it's true. You just keep thinking about it. It's like, this is an African American woman leading the police department to be the most prejudiced against the African American population. I mean, just let that sink in. Think about that. That's insane. That's disgusting. That's ridiculous. How does that happen? And there's a lot of people that are really upset that there's a lot of white people that are crying racist, or saying that you're saying or chanting or whatever, yelling that this is racist, that the police are racist, that you, Danielle Outlaw, are racist. Because there's a lot of the people in especially the African American community, every time that's said, sink their head into their hands. No, that is right. I thought I was being dyslexic saying hands into head, head into their hands, their face into their hands, and just like shake their head because they feel like it's so sad and so uncomfortable and so just annoying that there's all these white people crying out racist to somebody who's African American, knowing that it's about them being racist towards African Americans and Latinos. And it's like, but here's the problem with that kind of perception and that kind of treatment though, is why in the world do you think it's valid or good or smart to feel so upset and awkward and annoyed and I don't know, almost like it's invalid those that are, basically tubes or sacks of sour cream, like me and a lot of other, the majority of other people in the city of Portland, although I don't live in Portland, I live at the west side of it. But, you know, why is it that us white people aren't allowed to call racist or say that something's racist? I understand if they're not doing it in a calm, mature, collected fashion. But even then, it seems like a lot of the racial the people those that why am I having such a hard time coming up with a term here? Those that aren't white, I guess I'll just say, whether it's ethnically or racially, always are so embarrassed and upset and unaccepting and even offended sometimes by white people doing that. And it's like, here's the thing. This is something that, the African American community primarily, but also even the Native American community and others have fought for so goddamn long in this country. It's disgusting. It's basically been just about the entire country's existence, if not. You've been fighting for to get the white majority of people, now probably a minority in this country, to fight for you guys, to stand alongside you guys and be like, no, you're right, this is wrong. We can't, nobody should ever accept racism or any other form of prejudices out there, no matter what. There's no excuses for that. And we stand by you guys and support you guys, and we're gonna work with you guys to rid ourselves of all this prejudice and racism, hate, and venom and all this. And yet now that a lot of you, you guys are getting a lot of that, you're not accepting of it. You don't like it. You actually find it really mortifying and embarrassing or offensive or annoying or sad or just horrible. And I don't get that. Why fight for something for so long and then not want to accept it because, but you're white. Like, what the fuck? Like, yeah, it is primarily the white people that are really racist still. Yes, but here's the thing. Racism is not exclusive to any ethnicity or race. No prejudice is exclusive to a specific race or ethnicity or group. Anybody who believes that is a fucking idiot and moron. It's literally something that goes across all boundaries that you could possibly consider, create anything, or that are there in humanity that people believe in. It's interboundary, it's interracial. It's like no matter what race, what ethnicity, what, I don't know, religion or lack thereof you believe in, or literally everything, it's transversal. It's not exclusive to some specific race. Racism is not exclusive to white people. Yes, African, the darkest colored African people can be ultra racist. You can have Asians that are ultra racist. You can have Native Americans that are racist. You can have Aboriginals, which are, again, is just the Aussie native form and word for natives. But, you can have the Aussie natives be prejudiced. You can have Maori be prejudiced. You can have native Polynesians and Micronesians be prejudiced. I mean, you can have literally any ethnicity, you can have any race be prejudiced to other races, other ethnicities, any group of people. It's never been exclusive. It never will be exclusive. Yes, you see the majority across the world in the whites, but you also a lot of times see it and Asians. Especially in Southeast Asia, there's actually always been an strong element of racial and ethnic prejudices. And a lot of people don't, especially in the West, quote unquote, Western world, never have seen that, or they don't pay attention to it, or some combination of those two. But it's been very prevalent for a long time. And you have a lot of racism actually in Africa. A lot of people have never seen that. You have sometimes a lot of racism in Latin America, so Central and South America. A lot of people haven't seen that. One of the major problems, core problems that have always been there in the island of, I can't remember the official island name. I want to call it Dominica, but then that's actually a different island in the Caribbean. But the one with the Dominican Republic and Haiti, one of the major core problems of that is literally racial. It's literally racism, racial prejudice. That's one of its core problems. It's never been exclusive to white people. It's always been, any prejudice, including racism, has always been broad. It's always been anybody and everybody is capable of being a racist prick, a bigoted, prejudiced piece of shit. It's never been an exclusivist thing. And I think that's one of the biggest problems and biggest things that people, especially in the US, keep forgetting. Either that or they've never learned and they've never paid attention to or seen. I think that's really sad and actually rather dangerous that they don't see that or know that or have ever learned that that's the case. And I think that more and more now, as people are really coming to see that even a lot of white people are now coming under racial prejudices, like from those that are, whether they're African American or Asian or Native American or Arab, which is understandable in the sense that it's kind of a emotional reaction to the fact that there's a lot of xenophobia, there's a lot of Islamophobia, there's a lot of racism towards these various races. It's kind of like an emotional vengeance, an emotional reaction back to say, you think that it's valid to do it to us, so you know what, we'll do it to you. And it's like, when you have somebody who's that privileged but that also racist against you, it's like at that point you can almost feel like it's valid, even though it's never valid to be hateful or prejudiced. But it's like you can see where it's coming from is the point. You can kind of understand it. It's like, it's like at least in the sense of let's see how you like it then. And you almost feel like you have a lot more validity to it at that point too, including, using statistics and stuff. The point is that there's more people, no matter what their race or ethnic backgrounds are starting to note and see and realize here in this country that actually it is true. Anybody can be prejudiced, anybody can be racist, anybody can be ethnically prejudiced or religiously prejudiced or anything. And it's not exclusive to whites, even though that's always been kind of the perception that's been promoted in this country for the longest time because of its history. It's like that's not true. Anybody can be racist, and people are finally seeing that and realizing that now because there's so much prejudice and so much of every kind, especially racism and ethnicity wise and with religion. It's being seen more and more right now because this country is becoming more and more and more and more and more and more and more intensely upset and bitter and uncomfortable and prejudiced and vocal and vicious and hateful and hurt and spiteful and broken and divided, and it's just becoming something where all this friction's building up to where it's just constantly kind of popping and exploding and sparking and lighting a flame and all this. And so everybody's starting to really have all this brought to the surface, and then it just keeps growing because of all the division. And it's just like, Jesus Christ. I mean, this is how you tell a country's at the end of its days, because once this level of this explosivity and this division and this constant growth and all of it keeps going and going and going and going and going and going and going like it is now and has been for so long, at that point it's the absolute penultimate point where you see it's past the point of no return. At this point, this is where it just perpetually grows to the point where the country just kind of erupts into flames and just starts falling in on itself. That's what I wanted to speak about though. Is like, I feel like, especially those of the African American community in this country, they should not be feeling so upset or so awkward or so embarrassed by the fact that they have now a lot of people that are white, instead of being against them, on their side, supporting them, upholding them, working to expose the prejudices against their backgrounds, their skin color, their melanin levels, and actually, like, show it's like we're supporting you guys, we're upholding you guys, we're like, we're sick and tired of it ourselves, and we don't want to support anybody who's like this, even if they are a part of your community. In this case, Danielle Hala, again, is African American herself. You should always stand up against any and all prejudice. So if somebody is that prejudice, even if they are prejudiced against their own communities like that, and you are of the opposite race in this case, it should be taken as a source of, I would almost say, pride and happiness that you actually have this support that so much of your ancestors, your families, and even you probably have been fighting for as long as this country has existed, if not longer. You finally got that. You shouldn't be feeling embarrassed about it. You shouldn't be feeling upset about it. You shouldn't be feeling uh, like it's laughable or like it's unsupported. It shouldn't be supportive of something. You should fully support that because they're truly supporting you. There's so many that are supporting you. There's so many that have your back. There's so many that are doing it, and they'll even laugh with you. A lot of us do laugh with you guys because it does look and sound so fucking ridiculous and ludicrous and weird because it's like, what the fuck? What? Since when does this country have all these white people doing the fight against racism for, and crying out and pointing out of racism against African Americans? Like, when the fuck did that start happening so fervently? Like, when did that become like the favorite thing for white people to do? Like, now it's no longer you guys that are doing it. Now it's like considered a white person thing in this country. It's like, it's something that is actually rather comedic and pretty sad, but at the same time, it's like, but that's a good thing because that means that finally it's fucking happening. And that, when people can laugh at themselves, laugh at their own things, whether it's a mistake or a good thing or whatever, what have you, is a wonderful thing. It's a good thing because that shows maturity, that shows that they're not hypersensitive, that they're actually able to even make fun of themselves, to joke about themselves, to laugh at themselves for how ridiculous something may look and seem. And that does look and seem really ridiculous in this country, for sure. Especially considering now it's like, now the vocalizations and the, most of the Black Lives Matter people are actually white people. And it's like, what? You look at, like, what's wrong with this picture? And it looks wrong, but it's one of those things that look wrong, but it's not. It's like seeing a beagle and a basset cross. You're like, what happened here? That's not right. But it's so cute, and I love it. It's like one of those things. Just like, I don't know what the fuck went wrong here, but I love it, and I support it in whole. That's what it should kind of be looked at. Like, I feel like, yeah, you can still put your head in your hands because a lot of us that are advocating for you guys and supporting you guys and literally calling out racism like that do it the same way. We'll be shaking our heads, putting our head in our hands, like, oh God, this is so weird and so just it feels so wrong. But at the same time, it's like, and it is a little embarrassing. But at the same time, it's like, you know what? We're proud to be able to say that we've gotten. Sadly, it took us over 200 years to get there, but we finally got to a point where there's so many of us that are freaking white as goddamn sour cream actually supporting you guys, and we're sick and tired of the racism and the ethnic prejudices and all the other prejudices, and we're just literally fighting with you guys alongside you guys, and we're making sure we're as vocal as we can, and we're obsessed with call-outs in an emphatic sense, so that even if we have to keep repeating ourselves, we do it because of the fact that in our minds, you're beating the point home. Even if you're beating a dead horse, you're beating the dead horse. And obviously, beating a dead horse is something that gets a lot of attention, which means that people are paying attention to you making this point over and over and over again with a lot of emphasis, which means eventually it's going to get through people's thick skulls. This is not something to accept. You should not be accepting this prejudice. You should not be anything to do with that. And that's why you should also be seeing us as the fact that what we are. We're being supportive of you guys. We're sick and tired of it so much ourselves. We don't want to hear about the prejudices. We don't want to see it. We don't want it at all. We're so just done with it that it's about damn time that people started standing up for it, and we're the ones who are doing it. And so that's kind of why I wanted to talk today, is because the fact it's just like I see it as a negative, as a bad thing that so many in the African American community and even just other racial communities that aren't white are embarrassed and don't want, like, now that they got it, now they decided it's the opposite. They don't really want it, a lot of them. Either that or they do, but they don't want it. They want it kind of almost in a weird silent way, it seems like, from my observation and understanding. Like, that's the only way I can see it being wanted, because some do still want it, but they don't want it being vocalized about, it seems like, by white people. They just want it to be where you just kind of sit there with your, your arms crossed, your hands crossed, or whatever, or, held together, just silently, like, looking at the ground, but in quote unquote solidarity with them. And it's like, I can't see that as really being helpful. Just being present doesn't really feel like that's truly support. Like, I feel like you need to have vocality, especially in this day and age in this country. Vocality is the number one most powerful thing, specifically with that of power in numbers. So, people power, power in numbers in majority. You have that bound with vocality, and I feel like at that point, that's exactly what you want. That's exactly what you need. That's your biggest, best help by far. Therefore, you should be wanting tubes and sacks of sour cream. you know, uh, Vocally advocating for you guys and standing with you guys in solidarity, and holding each other up and saying, this is my brother, this is my sister, this is my family, like this, and we're not going to stand for the prejudices and the hatred and the any of it at all anymore. Like, we're all sick and tired of it collectively together, and that's why we're standing together in solidarity with each other and support of each other, because we don't want anything to do with any of it anymore. We're done with it. This is stupid. It's bullshit. There's no logic behind it, and it's just hate, and it's not unwarranted, and it's not right. And these are beautiful people. They're wonderful. They're just as capable as anybody else. And if you don't believe that, you need to shut the fuck up, because we're not accepting of you anymore. To me, that's a beautiful thing. That should be something that's wholly supported, even if it is something that you laugh at and you're like, everybody, you collectively together are like, this is kind of weird and embarrassing a little bit, but at the same time, you know what? It's helpful. We need it, and we appreciate the wholesome, true, wholehearted support and, solidarity. Like, we love you for that, like, that's what to me, it's all about. And so it's really sad to me to see a lot of people in the various other racial communities that, again, are not white as sour cream, that just see it as embarrassment and see it as something where they don't want anything to do with it. They don't want to hear people say racist. You can go on and on about all the prejudices in this country. It's like, freedoms? What freedoms? We all have is prejudice. Isn't it great? It's the American founding principles. Be prejudiced to everything. That's what it seems like, because our history has always been built on. It's so sad. But I digress. I think I repeated my point there at the end like 5 times in a row, I think. Bang the point home. Anyway, so I'm going to end today's episode of Chatterbox here. From the date I'm recording this, which again I believe is the 22nd. It might be the 23rd, but I'm pretty sure it's the 22nd. I'm not entirely sure. But anyway, hope you guys got the gist of it. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below about that. Yeah, I hope to see you in the next episode of Chatterbox, or whatever other video ends up next. Quote unquote video, if it's another Chatterbox, because it's not really a video. It's just a thumbnail that's posted there as a quote unquote video to make it a video file from an audio file. Yeah, you have audio. So you can just sit back and do whatever you're doing, or just relax and just listen. I don't know. Anyway, and yeah, I will hope to see you in whatever happens next. Stay safe, stay fluffy, stay supportive of each other, have a great night wherever you are, and hope to see you in whatever. Bye-bye.